DJ LeRoy.
NightWatchman, my brother. How you been, man?
I'm well.
Good. You know what, NightWatchman? Has anyone ever told you that you have one of these kind of like superhero names? Yes. I'm being overly like let's say pointing you in the direction.
I do run around New York sometimes wearing a strange costume at 3 or 4 in the morning, fighting crime.
That's right. Not contributing to it.
Right. See, but this is the difference between rich and poor in the United States. Because when you're richer, it's eccentric, and when you're not rich, they just want to take you away. But they haven't caught me yet, so I'm good.
Not yet. So NightWatchman, the last time we had a nice little show as related to let's say blacks in comics, and also let's say some of the also black iconic superhero characters. No doubt, why don't we continue that discussion, because we actually did miss one of the I would say foremost kind of like as they say comic book nerds that I didn't even know about, but a highly what were you about to say? Something?
Call him a comicologist. Okay,
I like this. Oh, did you just invent that word?
Absolutely.
Well, you know what?
Again, one of my superpowers is inventing words on the fly.
So why don't we get it popping by bringing up some of those characters who at the last show? What do you say?
All right. So who would you like to speak with?
Well, let's bring up Lasana, Akachi. Okay. Come on, my brother.
All right.
Good morning. How's everybody? NightWatchman, DJ LeRoy. What's going on, brother?
Good, my brother. Good. All right. And another one. Of course, you got to bring up, of course, Rob Taylor, man. Bring him out here.
Absolutely.
Rob.
Hey, how's everybody doing, man? Curtis, NightWatchman. Lasana. All right.
What's going on, Rob?
We're good.
All right, doing good, man. Doing good.
And also NightWatchman, another one who has that day going. He's got some superpowers with that name. You got to bring up AK Lovelace. You got to bring him up. All right. AK. Oh, NightWatchman, did you just make him disappear? Is that your superpower? AK.
Good morning, gentlemen. We meet again.
Absolutely.
Right, sir.
Absolutely. So, NightWatchman, it was not yet complete until we were able to close the circle. Okay. And like I said, you have, of course, with the mutants, they have who? Dr. X. We got Dr. Scorpio Rogers, PhD. Bring him up here. Yeah. See, once again, stop using that superpower, NightWatchman. Stop Welcome,
NightWatchman, DJ
Dr. Scorpio. All right.
Honey, Lovelace, Rob. It is great to be into this Soul Lounge prime time. I'm glad to
thank you, sir.
Hopefully not last appearance.
Oh, absolutely. Well, on that note, you know what? Why don't we start off with you, Dr. Rogers? And please, we got to have you talk about, let's say, your journey as it relates to comics. You've been in that particular space for a while, and as a matter of fact, you're the one who turned me on to this whole mutant exploration in terms of Red. So please tell me, Dr. Rogers, your entry. How long you been doing comics, man? Into them and their interest.
I have crossed over half a decade in comics now, which is hard since I'm less than half a decade. But I've been collecting just slightly over half a decade. I have about 30,000 books in my collection right now. I am definitely more of a Marvel person. My license plate has said T'Challa for about the last 12 or 14 years, way before the movie came out. Woo! As you can see, I'm quite a fan. Got a lot of my Black Panther stuff here.
Nice.
I've actually got a signed original script for the Black Panther, and from all the characters, and so I I just love the medium, and I'm very into the X-Men, and X-Men Red is absolutely, positively, without a doubt, the best book that's out right now. Wow. Next to the Black Panther book. Next to the Black Panther.
Oh, man. And you know what? Okay, gentlemen, one of the things that, you know, and I'll kind of open it up this way. Certainly, NightWatchman, I'll give you some props because you say I never give you props. You had mentioned that this was one of our conversations that we had in terms of, I should say, the comparison of the X-Men to the civil rights that we had. Let's say Dr. X being Martin Luther King,
it's
and we
Professor
had
X, by the way, Professor X.
Thank you. You're right.
He never completed his doctorate. He didn't go through his dissertation. He was too busy fighting other mutants and sentinels.
Gotcha. So also in another one, we had, of course, with Magneto being Malcolm X. So would you like to explore that a little deeper? And by the way, I hear something's coming in through my headphones. We able to isolate that, NightWatchman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Take it, NightWatchman. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, it's something that's been documented that you know, when they invented the X-Men characters, they were allegories where Professor X was basically an allegory of Martin Luther King, and Magneto was an allegory of Malcolm X. And so that basically makes the mutants an allegory of Black people in America. You know, people who've got superpowers but are misunderstood by the general populace. So you know, shout out to the early Marvel guys for being socially conscious and weaving that subtext into their comics.
Absolutely. And Rob, when you started your journey, of course, you told me that you've been to a number of the different imprints, right? And what would you say?
Yeah.
So, in terms of your journey, which imprint would you say kind of like really was an ally to Black folk in terms of the portrayals of us in their medium?
Well, I think pretty much in the 90s, we really started making a lot of noise about having a lot of Black characters, because we had, you know, a lot of white creators writing Black characters, and a lot of Black people had a lot of problems with that because they didn't know the whole diaspora of Black people in comics. They didn't know how we talked, how we moved around, how we communicated with each other. So that was a big thing. Like I would say, going into 2000, you know, that was pretty much a big thing. And I myself, I wanted to create my own characters in that scope of Black characters. I wanted to create my own because I wanted to be a part of that. I was working at, let me see, I think I was working at Atomic Paintbrush at the time. It was a color house by Dennis Calero, if you're watching. Yeah, so pretty much that was my experience, you know, having Black characters, you know, and because they brought a lot, they started bringing a lot of Black people in comics when that happened. You know, it was slow, but it pretty much came up to a point where they were okay. People make a lot of noise, so we just got to have some Black characters. So they started hiring Black people to do Black characters. You know, yeah.
Gotcha. And AK, since I know what you do, right? And it's so very, very important, especially at the Harlem School of the Arts, having these young people work, let's say, in animation and actually portraying themselves. Have you worked at any imprints where they also got that or understood the importance of having Black folk right from their heart, from their gut?
Honestly, I can't really say that. I have worked on a lot of different projects with a lot of different companies. Sometimes it was a Marvel project or a DC project. And I've worked with Black creators that are, you know, at the top of their game. You know, I've penciled comics where, you know, the main character was black and there was, you know, there was a conscious effort to kind of display that experience, but it's we still got a long way to go. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and minimalize what progress has been made. But the only thing that really jumps out to me as a and I pardon the pun, but as a real milestone in that this journey is Milestone. But besides that,
oh, wow, okay.
But besides that, the quickest analogy I would make for it is, in my opinion, Spike Lee is probably the best black film director to me that we have so far. And the reason is because Spike Lee is the only black film director that I find has consistently been able to make movies about regular black people. Not revolutionaries, although he does that too. Not drug dealers, but he does that too. Not Bible thumping churchgoers, but he can do that too. But just regular, going about their lives, black people. He does that better than anybody. And we are not there yet in comics. So definitely from the education perspective, when I'm working with the young people, really trying to make them conscious of that in or a more overt way about you love this genre, you love this medium, you are working towards being able to be part of it. Don't get trapped in drawing people that don't look like you, drawing in styles that don't have anything to do with how, you know, I love anime. Anime has not done a great job with black people at all. So, you know, finding that balance has been just
Gotcha. And certainly I know in our last discussion, Lasana, and you brought the heat, you brought the fire. Because we did talk about a character when we thought that superheroes in Hollywood, that stuff was like going out the front doors, being kicked out. Until we had this character, this black character, Blade, man. So could you expand a little bit more on that, man? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Am I mute?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, we live. All right, good. Essentially, Blade was a Marvel character, been around, coming out of a book called Tomb of Dracula, which was done by artist by the name of Gene Colan, and Marv Wolfman was the writer. And Blade was introduced as a protagonist for that. Now, Blade in the comic book Tomb of Dracula was, you know, black guy with an afro with this green jacket, running around with stakes, and they'll, you know, stabbing vamps in the heart and everything, turning them to dust and all like that. And he was essentially considered, you know, just a kind of knockoff D-list character. So what happened in the 90s, when Marvel went into bankruptcy and was having problems, and Image was just wiping up the floor with them in terms of sales and all like that, Marvel had basically a fire sale where they were selling as many of their properties and intellectual characters, their IP, intellectual properties, as possible to raise money and everything to stave off bankruptcy. So one of the characters that they sold off was Blade, who was best, would be considered a D-list character. Now, who bought Blade? Mr. Wesley Snipes. And Snipes, when he took the character Blade, because it was a fire sale, so he could get it cheap, I say, okay. So Wesley came and basically revamped the entire character of Blade. You know, he made him sleek, gave him a cool haircut, put on these shades that, you know, those mysterious like Hawk or mysterious like Shaft type shades, you know, that you put on. Gave him the sword, the katana, as opposed to just walking around with the wooden stakes like he was in the book, and put him in all black and sleek and everything. And, you know, of course, since Wesley, in addition to being an actor, was an accomplished martial artist, he brought that dynamic to it too. And what happened with that was a watershed moment. It blew everybody away, because prior to Blade, and Wesley Snipes making Blade, and I said it the last time and I'll say it again, you would not have the Marvel Cinematic Universe without Wesley Snipes putting out Blade.
Facts.
Because prior to Blade coming out, you had for years these just horrible and warped adaptations of Marvel characters that were just so bad. It was just like trash on trash. Some of it really was bad. It was that bad. And basically, Wesley showed you how to make a cool movie and have the elements of it in a cinematic style. And that's why Blade took off, especially with the so-called urban community. And I do mean so-called because it went beyond that. But that was the core that supported it. And those of us who know hip-hop and other forms of musical forms, when we excel in our forms, everybody follow and bite and try and come on after. So the same happened with Blade and Wesley Snipes, and he, to this day, still needs to get his full recognition for igniting what we now have lived through is the superhero age of movie going and shooting characters that has just been exponentially phenomenal. But it started with the coming and with the making of Blade by Wesley Snipes.
Nice. And speaking of, let's say, standalone platforms, and certainly Dr. Rogers, you can chime in on this. You've been a fan of T'Challa for a while. You say that you have a license plate that says T'Challa before even the movie was even thought of. So would you agree that what Lasana was saying about Blade kind of reigniting that or saving that type of genre, the superhero genre, from extinction? And then was it a good standalone on its own? And has, let's say, speeding up to, let's say, with Black Panther, has that been a good interpretation of the history of Black Panther?
Ooh, you going deep there, DJ
I am.
LeRoy. You're definitely going deep. So a couple things. First of all, in terms of Blade, at that point in time, Blade was definitely revolutionary in that it was something different. It was a new character, it was a black character. So, people knew about vampires, but having a black vampire slayer was something that the general population had never heard of. And so for the time, it was a good movie, and it did set the seeds that a superhero could star in a movie, and the movie could be around that hero. And so it definitely was the foundation. And like Lasana said, that he deserves his props for that. Given today's technology, the CGI, the advanced writers, the amount of time and money that they put into these movies, I think today, from a cinematic standpoint, it was great at its time. I don't think it stands the test of time in terms of matching some of the stuff that's coming out today. It's actually better than some of the stuff that comes out today, really most of the DC stuff. But in terms of the Marvel stuff is just, they put a lot of time, energy, and money into it. In terms of the Black Panther character, so I love the character, and the first movie was an excellent introduction to the character. It was an excellent introduction to the background, specifically Wakanda, and showing the riches and showing who Black people could have been left on their own to become the most technologically advanced nation in the world. And it showed what they could do. The second movie, I know a lot of people had problems with for many reasons, but specifically not recasting T'Challa. Being a purist from reading the books, I know that in the books, Shuri did become the Black Panther at a point in time, so it did follow that mythos. They did still not show a lot of strong Black men in the second movie, and so a lot of people had problems with that. Without ever seeing the movie, I knew they were going to do something to find a way to bring him back. And so we saw that at the end with the ending of kind of what their plans are and tipping their hat at how they're going to bring T'Challa back to be the actual Black Panther. But I thought the first movie was a great representation. They really expanded on Wakanda, showed the traditions, showed the royal family. And I think it did a very good job of really showing not only Black people, but the world, what Black people are, who we are in terms of showing the royalty, showing the pageantry, and showing how we are, how we could be back in the motherland.
I think we also need to talk about the development of the character in terms of the writers. So we talked about the fact that the character was created in the 60s by Stan Lee. But we also have to talk about the fact that the character has been developed and invigorated by a succession of Black writers that include Ta-Nehisi Coates, Reggie Hudlin, and several others. And what Ryan Cooper did to synthesize those versions of it, because the characters such as Shuri, Dora Milaje, those were all introduced through those Black writers who took the character and elevated and expanded it. And I think that we have to give them credit, because the version that emerged on screen was an amalgam of all of that effort to elevate this, not just the character, the Black Panther, the whole universe of Wakanda, the storyline and the culture, and bringing those cultural elements in it was what made that movie hit so hard, because we felt it, we recognized it. And I think that goes, straight to the development of a number of writers who contributed to it.
If I may, Curtis.
Curtis, you're on mute.
Okay. One of the things that, all of the things that NightWatchman said is surely definitely on. The phenomena of the Black Panther movie, the first film, was unprecedented. Unprecedented. And I might add, before I go into that whole piece, in addition to Blade, for a short time, Wesley Snipes also held the rights to the Black Panther for a short time.
Yes.
But they brought back the rights from Wesley and everything, when they saw the probabilities and the possibilities of doing something. Mm-hmm. And even when Marvel released Black Panther, they had no idea of the avalanche of support that would come for that film. Mm-hmm. All of the things that NightWatchman said, that Dr. Rogers said, were dead on point in terms of the Panther. But the other thing that's really key is the cultural zeitgeist, if you will, with people of African heritage in particular, in terms of why they responded to that character the way that they did. Because the character has been around since 1966, Fantastic Four, number 52. And that's when the Black Panther as a character debuted. Okay. And if people remember, or people who ever had access to that book and read it, the Black Panther actually defeated the entire Fantastic Four. He basically lured them there to basically test his prowess to see if he could, neutralize it. He basically, got them, and they, got out. But after that, everybody had a feast and had a party. So, you generally don't have that in superhero, but of course, African Kingdom, I tested my prowess, y'all cool, okay, we good now, So you also had an American Indian who was also hanging with the group, Wyatt Wingfoot, right, who was of the Kiwazi tribe. Now, interesting thing about Wakanda that, a lot of people don't know, and I recently found this out myself. Wakanda, when they came up with the name Wakanda was actually the name of an American Indian tribe here. Now, it's possible they could have been Black Indians, because there are definitely Black Indians like the Wapano in Massachusetts. That was definitely a predominantly Black Indian nation, if you will. However, Wakanda was definitely taken and was put in the coinage by a tree, and I think it was Jack Kirby was the one who actually did it, was going on a trip to a reservation and everything, and found out Wakanda and used that as one of the reference pieces for the character. Now, for the nation, for the character of the nation, excuse me. Now, the thing that really hit is the fact that it was a tidal wave of support, because I know folks, they didn't only go see the Black Panther once. They went and saw it 3 and 4 times. I'm one of those people. I went and saw it at least 7 times when it was out, the first one. Yeah, because it was that type of support. And it was also an event. People actually got their friends, got their crew, beyond their girlfriend, their regular folks. People went as groups, as events to go see the Black Panther movie, the first one and everything. That's why it got something like $1.9 billion first time. Marvel was floored. They didn't even expect that to happen. They were just going to put it out there. Oh, yeah, we'll do it. The other thing a lot of people don't realize, and it showed the love and the energy that came from doing that production, all of the actors who were in it, we're talking about, what's my man, Godfather Harlem, Whitaker, Forrest Whitaker, Angela Bassett, Kalu, even my boy Chadwick, may he rest in peace. All of them did it for scale. Scale in Hollywood is $1 million a picture. They just wanted to be in it and wanted to represent. And you showed and you saw from the performances how much they had invested in it, and it spilled over to the people. It's kind of like you're doing a jazz concert with call and response, and somebody hits the solo. Oh yeah, hit that. That's what the Black Panther was when we went to see it, and folks went back repeatedly and everything. And not only our folks, because like I said, it's the cultural zeitgeist. When we get it and we know it, everybody else want to come see it too. So we just brought in everybody else. We've always been the cultural leaders and indicators in this society.
Absolutely. So Rob, do tell me this. How many times did you see it? Oh, you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah, hello?
Yep.
Yeah. I saw Black Panther like 3 times. I saw it 3 times, 3 different movie theaters. Then I saw it on when it was able to stream. But I want to say that Black Panther opened the doors for everybody else, even DC, to do movies correctly. Do movies the way they're supposed to be done. Because if you remember I think it was Roger Corman, Fantastic Four, and I think he did a Captain America, and they were absolute trash. They did not work for anybody. They were awful movies. Yeah, and it took and basically it took a black character, as usual, or anything that we do, to bring everything else to the forefront. So we they basically, just like Lasana said, his point, they did it for scale. You had like some of the best black characters in Hollywood, doing this movie and getting people in, and it just went worldwide. People were showing up in the movies dressed like T'Challa, and the girls with the flowers throwing them on the ground. He was walking on flowers. So it was great to see. I was hoping I could go to the movies and I could actually see that. But people were doing it. Great. But Blade was a great way to really open up the doors for black characters in movies. So, big up to Wesley for doing that.
Beautiful. And AK, certainly we got to know that what is this? That what Rob was just saying, DC getting better at certain things. Would you say that Justice League is kind of like a knockoff of the Avengers?
No, you wouldn't say that.
Well, I just said it, but go ahead.
Okay, but
AK.
So I think that it's like most things, it's nuanced. The bottom line is that Marvel has a better feel for the live action movies. Marvel and DC are interesting juxtaposed to each other from the standpoint of I always think people are born under signs. So I'm not talking astrology. I'm talking like you like Superman or you like Batman. You're a Trekkie or you're a Star Wars fan, and usually it's one or the other. There's very rare that it's like cross current. DC DC's universe was always built. It's always was built on more mythology. From the fact that the cities that the DC characters occupy aren't real cities, to the fact that the nature of so many of their costumes, like everybody has capes and things of that nature. So DC always like pulled from like a more classical mythology for their stories, and Marvel kind of took the opposite direction. They kind of brought their characters down to earth. Can't say that Justice League knock off of Avengers, because Justice League predates Avengers. At least the Justice Society does. But I think the issue with the issue with DC, just from my perspective, when it comes to their movies, because the other thing about it is that so yeah, with the live action movies, DC is struggles compared to Marvel. But with the animated, it's not even a contest. It's like you flip the entire thing over. DC has been, since Batman the Animated Series, DC has been killing it.
They've been killing
anime. It's not even a contest. There's still not a Marvel animated thing besides the Spider-Man movies that I would even sit down to watch.
Well, but they had a run back in the day when they had the X-Men animated series, but we haven't seen anything since then.
I mean, the X-Men animated series was good from the standpoint that it stuck to the actual stories in the comics, which was actually like one of the most coolest parts of it, especially if you read the comics. But from the animation standpoint, it was so. Around the time that X-Men came out was also like a little while after the X-Men cartoon came out was when I started really getting my hands into anime, and it was just like, holy crap, this like this whole other place where they do whatever the hell they want. And it made me stop watching the X-Men cartoon because just the difference. Now, simultaneously, almost along the same timeline, I think a few years later, Batman the Animated Series would come out, and I had no problem watching Batman the Animated Series. So there's definitely a spectrum to the thing, and I think that some of the moves that DC has made, I think that them grabbing homie that did Guardians of the Galaxy was a brilliant move, because that last Suicide Squad movie is like the Suicide Squad movie. That movie is hilarious. It's really well written. Peacemaker is hysterical. Is easily one of my favorite. Like, I rather watch Peacemaker than most of the Marvel shows.
Wow.
So it's interesting. You get into a thing where, I mean, so one of the limitations that I find with the Marvel live action properties is that Marvel is a Disney property now. And when you're a Disney property, there's just certain things that you get to do, and there's certain things that you don't get to do. And meanwhile, DC, they don't have that issue.
Gotcha.
And they have had a lot of trouble trying to thread the needle because they were trying to skip. They wanted to get to where Marvel was without doing all the work that Marvel had to do to get to an Avengers movie. DC wanted to put out like 3 movies and do an Avengers movie and do a Justice League movie. That's not how this works.
Gotcha.
But regardless of that, the fact that they have, they don't have those kinds of roadblocks or like plateaus that they don't let you get above with the character. So you have a guy in Peacemaker making all types of like inappropriate jokes and I mean, like, even at the end of Peacemaker, when some of the DC top heavy hitters make an appearance, and just the exchange between them is hysterical, because you have these godlike characters, and then you have this bunch of hooligans basically, and the hooligans have no respect for the godlike character. Like,
you guys are late.
Everything.
It's over.
So it's just there's like it's gonna. I'm looking forward to them being able to kind of explore that more, because it's going to make the entire thing for both companies, I think, better. Because between Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, the new Harley Quinn cartoon, which is insane, and hilarious. And the new Superman cartoon. Like they just dropped a new Superman cartoon with like an anime tick that is awesome. Like
okay.
really awesome. So
Wow.
I'm like excited to see like both companies kind of find their sweet spot, because I think that's iron sharpens iron, and I think that's the best thing ultimately.
Oh,
I
love
gotta
it.
push back a little.
Oh, okay. Let me hear it.
As much as Peacemaker was okay, Deadpool was 1,000% better, 1,000% better, and definitely through Deadpool, Marvel was able to really cross some lines or walk right up to some lines and say some things. So, and I just think in terms of the characters, it's all about the writing, and Marvel just has it better in terms of the writing and the intricacies of how they interlace all the characters, and they bring in a bunch of. DC is, I mean, I like the Suicide Squad. I thought it was a pretty good movie, both of them, but definitely it doesn't. And Peacemaker got 0 on Deadpool. I mean, Deadpool is a way better.
Can I rebut?
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. We go. AK, go ahead.
Yeah, respectfully, hell no, bro. I think Deadpool is cool. Deadpool is a cool character. I personally don't think much of him as a comic book character. I think when Deadpool came out, the thing that made him cool, the thing that made him pop, is that he was a Snake Eyes in the Marvel universe. And then they kind of made him a Spider-Man that killed people, and that's kind of like where we are. But with regards to the comparison, I watched the Deadpool movie. I didn't watch the second one. It was good. It's funny. But in terms of like what you can do with the character, I'm still waiting to see what they do with the Deadpool character, because now that Marvel is owned by Disney and Disney is flexing that bank account.
Let's put some context in here. So Deadpool was not developed by Marvel Studios. Deadpool was developed by Fox. Remember, and this is one of the things that we have to look at in terms of the film. So with Marvel started the studios with their B and C list roster because they had already portioned out the X-Men and Fantastic Four characters to Fox, Spider-Man to Sony. Hulk has been floating around in this weird kind of a relationship. One of the reasons why they don't do a Hulk movie is because they don't have the rights to do a standalone, so they just keep putting him in Avengers and Thor. So there's also an issue in terms of the corporate dysfunction on both sides. So remember with DC, so DC has always been attached to Warner Brothers, which is why all the early Superman and Batman films were Warner Brother films. Now Warner Brothers is not the Warner Brothers we knew and grew up with, because now it's this new Warner Brothers Discovery thing. And so they've had issues with the change of leadership and ownership and the direction that they go. And also you have to factor in the problem that DC has always had an over-reliance on Batman and Superman, as opposed to developing the rest of the roster, whereas Marvel is much more of a even spread. You have major characters, but they don't rule the universe like Superman and Batman do. So I think those issues have created the unevenness. As AK said, Marvel took the long way around in terms of developing their characters. DC has always tried to either go for the short route or then go back to Batman and Superman, and it hasn't. Other than if you took out the Christopher Nolan movies, where would DC be recently in terms of films? They've had an uneven record since then, whereas Marvel actually developed almost 20 films in a row with a coherent arc. So whether they can do it again is another question.
Nice. Okay. Anybody? Go ahead.
Yeah. What NightWatchman said is dead on point, but it also ties into a whole another element that is really overridden what's going on, and why Rob created Superhuman Works and why I work alongside him with Superhuman Works is because we know that there's a market out there. Do you know that the comic book industry as late as 2021 last figures stated. It was with the printed matter of comics is a $1.9 billion industry. Let me say that number again, $1.9 billion industry.
Wow.
Now, what I also know is that particularly in the last 10 years or so, a lot of folks have gone and buying comics, but they have to go to the comic book specialty shops. So they're not no longer distributed when folks might have been in a certain time period, like say the late 60s, where you could go to the 5 and dime and there's a comic rack in the drugstore or something and you buy a book. That's basically been eliminated because of specialty shops. So you don't have the wide reach of people who had it. Like at one time in the 1940s and 50s during the war years, particularly World War II, you were selling like 5 million copies of comics, you know, a week, literally. And this is when comics were 10 cents. Okay. So you got that's going on. And then you have the other thing where, you know, they're basically pricing comics out of the regular people's really ability to keep up with it in a lot of instances. Not to mention now that you have changing media that's dealing with it. What's been the saving grace? And this I can give full credit to Stan Lee for, because even though he had a lot of failures, he was dogged and determined in terms of going out there saying, hey, you can do this, you can do this. You've dealt with people who made terrible product, but he knew that if you go by the formula, the Marvel formula, the stuff was going to work. But it took somebody outside of him, aka Wesley Snipes of Blade, to show them the way to go. And eventually they got Kevin Feige, who's been the guy overseeing the entire 20 movie arcs that Bob the NightWatchman was talking about in terms of getting them a really coherent and consistent uniform. Excuse me, not uniform, universe.
Universe.
Yeah, universe. What's going on with the DC side is that it's so scattershot. You know, like you got something like the Joker that comes out and the Joker made $1 billion. I just couldn't get it, but people like the characters. So, you know, and it's loosely associated with Batman, and Batman barely showed up in that movie. It was kind of a psychological investigation of the motivations and stuff and why the Joker became whatever. And Joaquin Phoenix, you know, nailed it. And, you know, he did a job with it. And then you get these other things like the aforementioned Justice League. What a lot of people don't realize with that is that Zack Snyder, the guy who initially did the what is it? Not the Watchmen? The Watchmen movie back in 1985, which is an adaptation of a series that basically changed the course of writing comic books by this British author Alan Moore. Basically changed it to the way people look at it. Now everybody wanted to go into this dark dystopian look at superheroes, which is what the Watchmen beautifully illustrated, but that's not the character essence of the DC characters. You can have characters with flaws and you can have characters with imperfections, but they still have to be characters that inspire people, that bring values. That's one of the things people loved about the characters, even when they were quote unquote boring. And a lot of these writers have gone to the far left with this dystopian depiction of these characters and made things just so whack. That's why when you came up with the Milestone universe, where you had characters that were specifically created to present a worldview by creators who'd been in the industry and knew that something needed to happen, that you had people like Icon, Rocket, Hardware, and Static, who became the face of the Milestone, because what does Static represent? He represented that youthful energy that Spider-Man initially had when he was introduced. Teenager who was kind of awkward and gangly, who had these amazing powers and coming out. That really hit the imagination. And I'm going to tell you something, a secret. When Milestone came up with Dwayne Duffy, Dennis Cowan, Aida Ayala, and oh man, forgive me for forgetting some of the names. You know, Rob can fill in some of the guys and gals who I'm not calling out. When they got together, and Hudlin was also initially in the conversation.
Derek Dingle, I believe.
Thank you, Derek Dingle. Derek Dingle. He was the CEO at the time. Thank you, brother. Okay. When those characters came together and they cut a deal with DC they say, okay, yeah, we'll let you do an imprint and everything. What DC didn't expect was that the Milestone was doing so well that they actually had people sabotaging them. Distributors wouldn't deliver it. Sometimes you'd have copies of the stuff laying on the docks where they wouldn't take it. So it was racism in terms of they were doing so well, they did not want the stuff to get out there. And even with that, they still did well. And they were forced to, you know, take a little seat back and reevaluate their strategy. But guess what? Milestone is back, and they've got a really great initiative called the Ally Initiative, where they actively go out seeking talent, minority and people of color and others who may not have had an opportunity to get into the industry and actually mentor and work with them to develop a whole new voice and a whole new spectrum of creators who are coming out to give people things that reflect them. The 70% of the people in those comic book shops now are Black and Puerto Rican, okay?
Okay.
At least here in New York City, and it may be that way in other major hubs around the country. So the demographic is also shift where that's concerned and how it buys. And the other thing to look at is the multimedia aspect of what comics can do. Because comics, then, when you have the solid stories, good characters, and well represented, they can get movies, you get lunch boxes, you get little stickers, you get all types of things. That's where all the money is coming from with the merchandise.
Merchandising, yes.
In both DC and Marvel, and why it's a cash cow and they want to milk it. And they're going to try and block anybody else out who want to get a part of that $1.9 billion pie out there. There's money enough for everybody to make, but they want to put a stranglehold on it.
Thank you.
Let me stop.
Who's that? Was that you, AK?
Yeah, I just wanted to tag in on what he said, because I think, and I actually got a question for the rest of the squad, because the two things. So I think like I think that what the interesting thing to me is that how the things that are happening in form. So you brought up The Watchmen. There were two comics during that era that changed comics forever. It was The Watchmen and The Return of the Dark Knight. And those comic books were direct reflections of a Paul that, because I think that one of the interesting things about comics and any kind of mass communication media is the back and forth between what's happening in society and what's happening in the art, and how they reflect each other and how they influence each other. And you have a series, you know, you're talking about the 80s, you're talking about Reagan, you're talking about the Cold War, you're talking about post-civil rights, post-Vietnam, you're talking about post-Pentagon Papers, you're talking about a lot of things that have happened over a very short amount of time, and the effect that it's had on people. So the level of cynicism in American society, just period, at that point is particularly high, which has some very interesting echoes to what we're going through right now.
Yep.
So when The Watchmen and Dark Knight come out, you have comics where you have these writers that are putting training, like they're putting they took the training wheels off the characters and they're applying, I always call real world physics. They start applying real world physics to these characters. So it's like, okay, The Watchmen, you have essentially a Justice League. It's like, well, what happens if you have like a bunch of people that could do these kinds of things? Like, what would happen? It's like, oh, you know, people would start, you know, the federal government, the most powerful, the superpowers of the world aren't going to let you just have a Superman running around. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, the Dark Knight, you know, Superman would definitely, you can't separate Superman and Americana from the government. So, you know, he would have, you know, so you start having all these things come into play. So I'm interested in like what everybody comes down on this whole idea of like, as things have changed and progressed, you have the back and forth, you have the new generation that are coming into it now, and how some of those factors inform the media and vice versa. Because one of the mistakes that DC made, from my perspective, is that it happened in comics first, because after the Dark Knight came out and after the Watchmen came out and it blew everybody's head off of their shoulders, it was like everybody was like, "Oh, that's the secret. Everything got to be dark." And it wasn't just DC. Marvel went right along the same thing, and just a general darkness and more adult tone gripped comic books for like a long time. Like to the point you still have people complaining about Superman, about how he became, not kidding, like he became he like they froze out kids from the Superman market, you know? And they did the same thing in the movies. Like, so Kevin Nolan does his Batman franchise. It's extremely successful. And it's like the lesson that DC took from that. It's like, oh, everything's got to be serious and dark. I don't think there was a single bright blue sunshine day in Justice League. like everything is just gray and grim. So I'm interested in about how like these things and like the rest of the panels like how they see these things like all coming together, because it definitely one influences the other, and it is a circle.
Scorpio.
Well,
weigh in. Oh, you know that.
Yeah, no, interesting point. It definitely was, and I understand Dark Knight Returns, but I'm definitely going to go. Watchmen was really kind of the start of it. It was something that no one had ever seen. I still say Watchmen is one of my 5 favorite books. Period, not comic books. Books. Period. That I've ever read. It was just different. It came out from a different. And the story of Watchmen was interesting because DC had bought these characters, and then they basically did Watchmen and killed them all off. And like, well, we can't do that. So they changed all the names of the characters, changed it a little bit, and that's how they created the Watchmen and the Watchmen universe. So it was really, really interesting backstory to that. But it's a cycle. So and people follow people. So you have the darkness, you have the period people like the dark, gritty stuff. Then that goes out of vogue, and then people want you start doing a lot of female characters, and a lot of female characters come into vogue. So it's really very, very cyclical. When one company has something that's successful, the other company winds up starting to follow it, and the people follow it. I mean, right now, I think just going back to the X-Men, where I started, X-Men finally, they have their own nation, they're doing their own thing, and things are good. But you can't keep things good for Black people forever, right? So now they're doing the fall of the X-Men. They're scattering them all over, and it kind of ties in just sequentially with what's happening with SCOTUS right now. So that they're trying to disband affirmative action across education, and so you see some ripples of things that are happening in society that are actually going into comics in a different form, but it definitely mirrors a lot of things that are really happening, and so. It's very cyclical. It's very good. You always have your characters where you build them up and then you got to break them down. This very last run of the Black Panther, they tore him down to his lowest. Like, he's losing fights to people that normally he could beat in like 1 second. And they just brought him down. They exiled him. They did everything. But now this new run, which is on issue 4, the artwork is fantastic. You're showing the different side of him. You're building them up. So that's like you said, it's very cyclical in comics where at some point in time you got to break down your characters and you got to build them up. But that's what keeps it interesting, because you make it interesting, you make it new. And I just got to throw out some love for the writing they're doing for Storm. I mean, they're showing Storm as really one of, if not the most powerful character in the Marvel universe. She is the emissary of this galaxy, not just Earth, but this guy. When you come in, you got to deal with her, and so. It's nice that they're building her up and giving her some love, but it's very cyclical, like you said, AK. And I think Rob wants to say something. Go on, Rob.
Yeah, Rob.
Well, the thing about it is, I don't know if anybody remembers Mantis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Mantis.
Of course.
Mantis was pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I was excited when Mantis came out because, first of all, it's a Black character. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see what the character was about. And what they did, I mean, they did a good job with it, but then it got to the point where it was gaining a lot of respect and a lot of people were watching it. So what did they do? They changed the characters, his allies, because they were dressed as they were African. They were dressed in African garb, if anybody remembers. They were African garb, and then when the show got really popular, they changed it to a white guy, like I think a white guy and a Spanish guy, So I really didn't particularly like that, but the world wasn't really ready for Mantis, and how they were doing Black characters as far as television,
Well,
And
how long ago did Mantis come out? Back when?
That was a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Mantis was like maybe like 90s. Yeah, like 90s, I think. Yeah, like 90s. Yeah. And the thing about it is that we really have to look at it, you know, microscopically when we're putting characters that are in media, that are in comics and things like that, because they're going to be done different, you know. But now it seems like the door is opening, you know, for black characters to pretty much do what they want, you know, but not within DC or Marvel. It's just that pretty much whatever the writer puts together, you know, because some writers have a long range of pretty much doing what they want, and some characters, I mean, some writers like, well, we'll just do just enough, you know, just get those characters out there. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that point out, you know, with Mantis and everything, because I think a lot of people forgot, you know, that he was basically the first character of color on television in a superhero role. Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left. I want to take this into a different direction. So we talked a whole lot about Marvel and DC. I want to talk about how do we create or elevate characters from Rob or AK so that those are the major characters that we're talking about. How do we get your properties, which your intellectual property, which you own and control, to the next level, as opposed to, I mean, I love all the Marvel characters. I love love them, but it's Disney. I love the DC characters. It's Warner Brothers. I love Rob's characters and AK's characters because it's Rob and AK, and it's about time that we take our own stories to the next level. So what's the next path forward for us in terms of elevating Black intellectual property in the superhero genre?
Okay, who would like to take
I think,
that first? Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, well, I think, well, with Superhuman Work Studios, we definitely want to attach ourselves to the mainstream media, you know, as far as getting our books on the shelves, you know, and getting an audience, you know, getting an audience. I mean, because right now, our audience is more of hearsay and internet, you know, but we want to go broader. We want to go a little bit broader with that, you know. So basically, you know, with my company, you know, it's pretty much lack of service, like far as, okay, how can we get our books out there? How can we get more people interested in Superhuman Work Studios, where it'll just take off on its own? Because there are other things that we want to do also. We want to do animation. We want to do motion pictures. You know, we pretty much want to do all these things, but, you know, it's more of a monetary thing, you know, as far as getting that done. And I always say, like, once the comic books take off on their own and they don't have to be monitored so closely, then we can, like, pretty much do like all the other stuff, like action figures and so forth, you know. So I think that's pretty much where we would like to be headed. We'd like to be headed in that direction.
Gotcha.
I would like to just jump in here real quick. So,
go ahead.
You know, there's the East Coast Comic Convention. I think they just had their 30th year. That's a Black Comic Convention. That's in Philadelphia every year. Obviously, so we definitely need to advertise that more and support that more. Obviously, their comic conventions. There's the comic art show that the Schomburg does every year in January. We need to go and support that. So part of it is, I taught entrepreneurship for 17 years. Entrepreneurship is my specialty. And part of it is quality, right? So coming out with quality characters. Obviously, it's a monetary thing. You can't do all the things you want. Books are way more expensive now. I remember talking about that rack. I remember going into a comic book store with $1 and coming out with 5 books and they were 20 cents each. That was kind of my first introduction. And I remember when they went to 25 and 30 and 35, who knew they would be, you know, $3.99, $4.99, $5.99. Like I never imagined that. So it's hard to get the books out, but I would say focus on quality. You got to hit the shows. So you got to hit the Black comic shows, hit the smaller comic book shows, start to get people interested in your product. Go, you got to travel a little bit to different places, whether you drive there, get people interested in your comic, get them to start buying you, and then incrementally. But I do like what he said in terms of partnering, figuring out how to partner with, once you get a good character, partner with a bigger entity that can help sponsor your character and bring it into the mainstream.
Exactly.
That's what we got to do. We've got to be focused and syndicated on letting people know about the media, letting people know who's in the media. I always talk about one of the things, you're in the same industry, partner. It's not impossible for you to partner. Maybe you'll do a joint book together where you'll both have your characters in there, and that'll give more people exposure to your characters across each of your both platforms. So it's tough work. It's not easy. I'm definitely won't make it sound like it's easy, but I think everyone listening, there are a lot of young people, I can tell you that, listening to this right now, looking at this right now, that want to know how to get into the industry. So we should tell them how to do that, but you just got to put in the time. Like I always say to all my entrepreneurs, 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. That's what you got to put it in. But if you put it in, and you give that quality, then like you said, you'll have that breakthrough where you have that one character that really takes off, and then you can start doing the other things and having other characters take off.
Beautiful. And you know what? Let me also say this. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a walkthrough with my staff at Harlem School of the Arts. And so, AK, I saw the studio where the creatives, where the young people are doing their thing.
You came through to my crib and you didn't tell me.
But blame James. James, if you're listening to this, hey. But anyway, having said that, impressive. So please tell me you heard what Bob laid out there. So take it.
Yeah, I think that it's, I think it's complex and multifaceted. I think there's a few different things that need to be taken into account. I think number one, Black people recognizing our buying power. The people that wrote one of the HBO's biggest shows at one point wanted to go write a Civil War show where the South won, and that got nerfed. And it didn't get nerfed because of the white executives. It got nerfed because Black people lost their minds, and Black people's buying power when it comes to entertainment is a lot larger than anybody likes to talk about. That's why that didn't happen. So like really, so part of it I think is just a business thing. It's like, you have to understand the game that you're in. You have to look at how do these larger companies do some of the things that they do? How do they get the market share that they have? Linking up with large Black investors who are out there and getting them to buy in, I think is part of it. Where are the billionaire Jay-Z's or Oprahs or whomever that might be interested and have the capital and have the reach to bully their way into the market? Xbox was not successful its first year, but Bill Gates and Microsoft had that kind of money that they could lose money on every Xbox that they sold and stay there long enough till Xbox finally caught on. So that's part of it. I think another part of it is the fact that, like I said earlier with the whole Spike Lee reference, is being able to one thing that I recognize is that like a lot of kids, they're not really into superheroes like that. They like superheroes,
right?
But they don't like the American framework of superheroes. And this is something that I brought up before. These kids, recognizing the ground that you're on right now, not fighting yesterday's battle. The way that these children interact with literature and the way that they assess it, the way that they read it, and the kinds of tastes that they have is not the same. It's faster. We have a situation where like the literal attention spans of a lot of kids are kind of jacked up because everything is so fast and instant that it's literally burning them out. So there are a lot of like really complex things that play into that we have to get our arms around if we want to capitalize on it. And the last thing I'll say is that again, when you come to this place where you have a lot of exposure to other places that are doing other things, you have to pay attention to what those things are. One of the things that it makes manga and anime appealing to so many people is the lack of limitations, but not just in the sense of violence or sex, but also in the sense of mundanity. You know, they're like super successful Japanese comics about a guy that works in an office. You know, so and there's a lot of people out there that's the kind of material they want, and being able to make comics with Black characters that aren't superheroes, that are normal people. And like when I made City of Walls, the thing that I wanted to capture the most is I wanted to put normal people in extraordinary situations as opposed to extraordinary people in normal situations. So that's why my characters are kids. You know, I made one of my characters a Black girl, and I wasn't over the top in the sense of being overt. There are like racist, there are like allusions to racism in City of Walls, but it's not necessarily the driving force. And that wasn't me or Sean, my writer and co-creator, being coy about racism. It was just about creating a more holistic sense of all of the different things that are happening here. This kid is poor, she's Black, she's a minority in terms of like most of the people that live in the city aren't Black, they're Asian. So there are these other factors at play, but it's all a piece of a larger thing. It's not the thing that we don't have to always put a finger on it. And the last thing I'll say is that, again, when it comes to recognizing the ground that you're fighting on, we are literally in a situation right now where the country that we live in is on the precipice, because we essentially have a controlling demographic, which is to say white America, that has never gotten its arms around what the country purports itself to be and stand for. And how we solve that Rubik's Cube from within our realm of entertainment, you know, part of that is utilizing our people's interest in the genre more. Part of it is figuring out how to bully our way into other demographics. And it's about finding it's a multifaceted and complex solution that is continuously changing. And it's not going to be a passive thing. And it's not going to be a thing that we can get past by being coy about the things that are affecting it.
Gotcha. Okay. Lasana, we're going to go around and last comments in terms of how folks get in touch with you. Go.
You can reach me at akachiarts@gmail.com, and also through for the email, and also through Superhuman Works.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, next, Rob, you.
Yeah, actually, you can like Sana said, Sana's my partner, and you can look at Superhuman Works Studios at Superhuman Works Studios Shopify .com. Because you can actually go there and check out the books, you know, and you can do that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Scorpio, tell us what's happening there at the Mercy University campus there in Midtown. Go.
That's right. I'm vice president of both the Bronx Manhattan campuses of Mercy University. We're doing 1,000 amazing things. If you want to reach me, I am the only Scorpio Rogers on LinkedIn. I'm also the only Scorpio Rogers on Facebook. So you can reach out to me either one of those two ways. That's probably the easiest way to reach me. Just kind of stay tuned. But I am going to check out my colleagues. I'm going to buy their books, and I'm going to definitely continue to support them and let people know about all their great works.
Beautiful, beautiful. And of course, AK, yes, I promise I come to Harlem School of the Arts again. I will hit you up. But go ahead. Where do we reach?
Yeah, you can always find me on LinkedIn, a.k.lovelace. You can find me on IG, a.k.lovelace, period. You can read City of Walls at cityofwalls.com or on Webtoon, our publisher. And you can always find me at Harlem School of the Arts, right up there on 141st in St. Nick's.
Beautiful, beautiful. So with that, NightWatchman, take us home.
I get to take it home. All right. Well, you've been listening to Soul Lounge Primetime We air on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, every Monday night at 7 o'clock. You can find us at 8 o'clock live streaming on YouTube or Facebook. You can find us on Facebook at YouTube, Soul Lounge Primetime, on YouTube channel Soul Lounge Primetime. We're also on your favorite podcast platforms, including Amazon Music, iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeart. Ask Siri, ask Alexa, ask anybody you want. You can find us by saying, play the latest Soul Lounge Primetime episode, Siri. Thank you. So thank you for these guests. We love them. We support them. We're gonna have them back when the Blade movie comes out. When next winter after the new Harlem Schomburg.
That's right.
We'll
Comic book fair. Yep. We're gonna have them back. Absolutely, because you know what, Night Watchman, these are our superheroes.
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much, guys. Excellent.
Thank you guys, Night Watchman and DJ LeRoy, for having us on.
All right.
All right.
All right, man.
See you guys later.
Yeah,